with a fresh cup and coffee and a Franzbrötchen. And the next talk will be creating your first Silverstripe module, and James will be talking. James Cocker from Edinburgh in Scotland. And so please, a big applause for James.
Good morning. Hello. I'm going to start by letting you know I've just been informed that at 11 o'clock today, apparently Germany has decided to test its emergency alert system. So if in 10 minutes' time there's sirens going off left, right, and center, stay calm. It's nothing to do with me, and we'll carry on. So, I'm James, thanks Werner. I am a freelance web developer based in Edinburgh, Scotland. You might also know me as Purple Spider from GitHub, etc. And today I'm going to be taking you through how to create your first Silverstripe module. We'll also be looking at different ways to customize modules. Can I start with a show of hands? Who here has already created and published a Silverstripe module? Nice. Thanks for your contributions. I've learned a lot creating this talk, so I'm hoping you will too, despite all the kind of modules that I've got out there. I'm also hoping it inspires people to maybe publish their first module. Okay, so today we will be going over how to create a new Silverstripe module, how to make it available to the Silverstripe community, how to make updates to that module and maintain it. I'm then going to kind of switch around and go through some different ways that you can customize modules created by other developers. And finally, I'm going to then go over some ways that, as a module developer, you can now make it easier to customize, easier for others to customize your module. So let's quickly go over some basics. What is the Silverstripe module? Well, if we look at the docs, it says that a module is a collection of classes, templates, and other resources that is loaded into a directory. And these packages basically need to contain either a top-level config directory or a config PHP file, as well as a special type in the composer JSON file. So that's the basics of it. A module is a folder with our resources in it, with our PHP code in it. At the very least, it needs an empty config directory or an empty PHP file and a composer file so that we can install it. Okay, very quickly, let's have a look. Where can we find modules? The official place, addons.silverstripe.org, is great because we can filter based on Silverstripe version and a few other aspects. You can also just search on packages or searching on GitHub. Easy. How to install modules? Well, most modules should provide their installation instructions in their README, which is typically just a composer require line. Don't forget to do a dev build afterwards. So how do we create a module? Well, how about we start with why should you create a module? Maybe you want to group the code for related functionality just together within your site to make it easier to manage. Maybe you want to reuse a specific feature across multiple websites that you maintain. Maybe you want to share that functionality with all the other Silverstripe developers. Maybe it's going to be all of the above. Okay, so how do we create a module? Let's get started. So you may recognize this lovely demo website from a couple of years ago when I did a guide to Elemental. It's a simple website with a homepage for a car rental site. And we've got a list of vehicles here. For each vehicle, we can click on check availability. We've got an availability form. And when we submit that, we get a thank you message. Having a look in the CMS, we can see that the vehicles are managed just with a standard Silverstripe model admin. Each is a data object, standard Silverstripe fields. And we have got a vehicle holding page type that lists all the vehicles and also has an email inquiry form. All standard Silverstripe stuff. So let's say that we want to separate out some of this car database functionality into a module. Perhaps we are going to be creating more car rental websites, and we want to collect that common functionality into a single module that we can then use amongst our websites, or as mentioned, maybe you want to make that functionality available to other Silverstripe developers. Let's do that now. Let me take you through it step by step. Firstly, at a very basic level, as we already have learned, what you could do is create a folder in the top level root of your website, maybe call it car database. Pop in an empty config file or an empty config folder so that Silverstripe picks it up, and then move over your resources, your templates, and PHP files. That would work. You can move it out, you've got everything in one place. That's the very basics of a module. And you could even just copy that folder into another website. Okay, it makes it a bit more difficult to manage, but the very basics of a module are really simple. If, however, we're looking to then make that module available to the community or make it easier to maintain across multiple websites, there's a few more steps we need to do naturally. So let's have a look at how we would go about doing that. I'm going to start by jumping over to the official documentation for modules. And if we scroll down to the creating a module section, we will see it says the easiest way to get started is our module skeleton. So let's have a look at that. So the module skeleton is basically a boilerplate for a Silverstripe module. Now, if you've not created a module before, you may initially look at that list of folders and files and want to run away screaming because there's a lot of stuff there. But the very basics, I'm going to go through the very basics of what you need to worry about here for it being a Silverstripe module. And we've basically already touched on those with regards to the config folder, the source directory for your PHP files, and the composer.json file. So let's go through creating this module. Now, this skeleton module has been set up as a GitHub template. So that allows us to click this Use this template button and click Create a new repository. So I'm going to call it Car Database. Now I'm going to start off by making this private because it's not going to be ready for use to start with. It's up to you whether you just start off with it public. But I think it's nice to keep it hidden until it's ready. So let's go ahead and create that. And what this will do, it will basically create a new repository in your GitHub account with a copy of everything from that module skeleton, ready for you to work on. Okay, there we go. Nice. Oops, right. So what we're going to do here, we've got this skeleton now. So the plan is to pull this empty module down into our site, copy across the various bits of code that we want to move into the module, and then push back our changes up to GitHub so that we've got our completed module ready on GitHub to make public. So how do we go about doing that? Well, first thing we need to do, the skeleton, Silverstripe skeleton has multiple branches for different Silverstripe versions. So the first thing we need to do is simply just rename our branch from 5 back to main. Easy. Okay, now the next thing we need to do, we're going to pull down our empty module into our project using Composer. So before we can do that, we need to give our module a unique name. So I'm going to jump in and edit the Composer.json file directly. The only thing we're changing at this moment in time is the name. I will take you through the rest of it a little bit later. Purple Spider /car database. So let's go ahead and commit that to the repository. Perfect. Okay, so we're now all set to pull this empty module down into our project so that we can get working on it. So let's find our source code. Here we are. And here we have the source code for our demo website. Yeah, we get it, we get it. Okay. So what we need to do is jump into our Composer.json for our website. Now, I should note at this point, you have a choice. You can either create a fresh new Silverstripe site solely for developing this your particular module within it and pull down it into that fresh site, or you can pull it down into an existing project. You probably want to do the first one. I'm going to do the latter just for the basics of this demo, but the steps are exactly the same whether you are doing it in a fresh project or an existing one. Who is this still going on? Okay. So first thing we need to do, our repository is private, so we need to tell Composer about it. How do we do that? Well, we simply slot in to our Composer JSON file this line here, which is an array, and it gives it the direct URL to our repository that you can find on GitHub by clicking the green button. So Composer now knows when it's looking for stuff to look in this repository. Now we can go ahead and install our empty module into our project. So, there's always one. So, this is the magic part. So let me bring this up a bit more. Okay, so to install our module, our base module, into our project, we're going to use a standard Composer require. We're giving it the name, Purple Spider Car Database. That's the name that we added into our Composer JSON file in our module earlier. We want the dev main because there's only the main branch to pull down, but this is the magic bit at the end, prefer source. What this does is, it means it doesn't just pull down the files into your vendor folder, it will also pull down the whole repository as well. This means that you can then work on your module in your project and commit any changes to that repository and push it back up to GitHub. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to ignore them. Okay. Right, so that's it, installed the module. Let's have a look. Let's bring open our sidebar, have a look in our vendor folder. And if we have a look in Purple Spider, we see we've got car database. So here is our empty module, ready to start populating. Right, so if we jump back into our source code for our rental website, and let's find the files that are related to the functionality that we want to move into our module. So if I look in admin, controllers, data objects, and all these up. So I want vehicle admin. I also want vehicle holding page. I want the vehicle data object and the vehicle holding page controller. So I'm going to cut those, and I'm going to paste them into our module. Nice. Now I want the templates. So let's have a look. Let's close app back up. And I'm simply going to jump into our theme and our templates for our site. And you'll see that in our templates, we've got our vehicle card and our vehicle holding page templates. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that complete Purple Spider directory. And we're going to paste that into our module. Now, there's one thing we don't want. We don't want the home page to be in our module because that is related to the website. So I'm going to remove that from the module. And then if we jump back to our website code, I'm just going to remove the module-specific templates to do with the vehicles. Okay, so now we've copied our PHP files from our site into our module, and we have copied our templates into our module. One last thing, there is a bit of config that is related to this functionality. So I have added the ability for someone using this functionality to be able to turn on and off the inquiry form if they wish. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the site config, and then I'm going to go and find the config in our module. Here it is, our empty file. I'm going to paste the config in there. So now we've got the source, and we've got the templates, and we've got the config. The last thing we need to do is update the namespaces. So it's obviously a good idea to give your module a unique namespace so that it doesn't clash with anyone else's classes when they install your module on their site. So to do that, I'm going to just do a nice find and replace. And I'm going to do Purple Spider / my site, and I'm going to change it to /car database. Replace all of those, and do / as well so we can get the templates. Okay, namespace updated. And because we've changed the namespace, we need to change the template structure too. So all I need to do is rename my site to car database. There we go. Nice. Okay, so let's do a dev build and see how we're looking. Jump over to our site. Give it a flush. Okay, So you can see that it's complaining that it can't find anymore this Purple Spider My Site vehicle holding page. And that's because we changed it. We changed it to Purple Spider Car Database vehicle holding page because it's now in a module. So we wanted to give it our own namespace. Now, if you created a fresh Silverstripe site to start working on for your module, you probably won't have this issue. If you're using an existing site and you're trying to move functionality into a module, then that's where you'll probably run up with this issue. Now, obviously, you could jump into the database and manually update any instances, but that would be silly because Silverstripe can sort it all out for us. So to do that, if I jump back to our source code, and I'm going to go into our site config, I'm going to create a new config file, just call it upgrade.yaml, and in there, I'm going to slot this in. So this code here simply says, the next time a dev build is run, see if there's any instances in the database of Purple Spider My Site Vehicle Admin. If you find any, please change them to Purple Spider Car Database Vehicle Admin, and the same for the other classes. So I'm going to save that, do a dev build, jump back to our site, give another flash, and now we're all good to go. So here we have our functionality now running from our module. That's all still working nicely, even though we've moved the code into an actual module. So this module can effectively now be used internally. You can copy it around your sites. But let's go ahead and sort out our module's composer file so that we can publish this module publicly. So where's our module composer? Here we are. So this is the file that we edited earlier when I simply changed the name at the top. So you will also want to add a short description of your module that will appear in packages. The type it's important to leave as Silverstripe vendor module so that it can detect it as a Silverstripe module. You'll want to update the keywords that help people find your module. And the requirements, if your module requires other modules, you can enter the requirements here so they get installed automatically. And down here I need to update the namespace. So I'm going to go Purple Spider Car Database. There we go. And there's no tests in this demo module, so I'm going to remove that line. This line here with the extra expose, this is required if your module is going to have front-end code, so CSS or JavaScript, that you need to be made available on a site that your module is installed. This module doesn't have that, so I'm going to remove those lines. Okay, lastly, quick check of the license. It uses the standard license is the 3 clause. We might want to stick our name at the top. And the README. So the README is obviously very important. The README in the skeleton module is really helpful at explaining what a README should contain and how to structure it. So I advise you to have a read through it. I'm going to slot in a simple README for our module, which simply gives it the name of the module, describes what it does, tells you how to install it, how to use it, how to configure it. And I would really like to encourage you, if at all possible, to add screenshots into your READMEs. They're so useful when searching for modules, trying to find the right one. Please go to that little bit of extra effort just to take a few screenshots of the front end or the CMS, and it makes the world of difference when trying to find useful modules. Okay, so we have moved in our source code, our templates. We've updated our README. We've moved in our config. We've updated our composer JSON file. Now we're ready to push it up to GitHub. So save our README. Going to open up. So I use the Tower app for Git, so you might well end up doing this on the command line or however else you wish to interact with Git. So this is the repository that got pulled down earlier when we added that prefer source option onto the composer require command. And so it's all there, ready. You can see that it's picked up the changes that we've made to the skeleton module, the changes to the config, our changes to composer, our license, our README, and then we've added our source and our template. So I'm going to go ahead and commit those to this repository. Let's say initial code commit. And then let's go ahead and push it up to GitHub. So let's jump over to our repository. And there we go. So we've got all our code in here on source. And we can see all our vehicle stuff. Perfect. Okay, so this is now ready, but it's still private, so no one can find it. So the first step we want to do is make it public on GitHub. So I'm going to go into settings, all the way to the bottom, change visibility, and jump through the 100 hoops that GitHub makes you jump through to make it public. I knew this would go ahead. There we go, easy. How do you know? Okay, so we've made our repository public. So while it's public, that really only means that someone could stumble across this repository on GitHub, and they could maybe download it manually and copy the files into their project and get it running. But they're not going to be able to install it using Composer. They're not going to be able to discover it on the Silverstripe add-on site. And that's because the next step we need to do is submit this module to Packagist, which is the package repository that Composer uses. It's dead easy. I'll show you how. We simply go to packagist.org. Log in. You can log in with your GitHub account. You don't even need to create an account. Once you're logged in, click Submit button at the top, and it will ask for the repository URL. All we need to do is jump over to our repository on GitHub and copying the URL from the top of the page, pasting it in, clicking the big check button. It will confirm the name. That's the name we popped in that Composer JSON file at the start. So if we're happy with that, we click on Submit. Packagist will now crawl that repository and add it into its database so that it's ready for use with Composer. Okay, that's the module live. It's all done. It's all ready. It can be used by other people. You could try it now if you're in the audience. But let's test it now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use one of my handy scripts that I demoed last year to create a new site. Let's call it Stripe Rental. Stripe Rental, looks weird. Anyway, that'll do. And this script, it's simply creating a fresh Silverstripe site ready for development on my local machine. Setting up the database, it is setting it up in Valet, which is my preferred development environment. It is, nope, try again. There we go. Setting up an SSL certificate, and then it will restart Nginx. And hopefully we'll have a fresh Silverstripe site to try and install this module on. Here we go. We've got our site. Look how quickly from those last year. Remember, it took about 5 minutes on the slow hotspot last year running that script. So that's how fast it should be. Okay, so we've got our empty Silverstripe site. I can log in. We've got our empty CMS. Perfect. And here is our code base for it. Right, let's install the module, see if it works. So how do we install it? Well, let's read our own README. It says, Composer require Purple Spider car database. So I'll copy that, open up a terminal, pop it in, and it will install the module. Hopefully, not too slowly. Perfect. Do a dev build, of course, because that's what it says next. And let's go and refresh our site. And there we have it. We've now got a vehicles model admin. We can test it out. Let me make it a bit bigger. I'll add a couple of cars. Volvo S40. What's last? I'm going to add a couple in. I won't bore you with filling in all the details of various cars, but it actually, that'll do. It's the wrong one. I mean, my Volvo's the S40, and I thought I could include it, and I decided to change it at the last minute. It's a Kia EV6. Automatic. Okay. It works. Great. Let's test our page. We can create a new page. We've got a holding page. There it is from our module. We can create it, change it to vehicles, publish it, see if it works. Here we go. We've got our Kia listed. We've got our Volvo listed. We can click check availability. And we've got our form. And it works. Our module works. There we go. So that's how to create a Silverstripe module. So those are the official steps from the official Silverstripe documentation. And I think it's that bit, using the prefer source, to be able to install your module using Composer, that's still being able to edit it, that is the key part that I think a lot of people kind of missed when they're trying to update their own modules. Okay, let's have a quick look at how we're going to update this module. Firstly, it is good practice to tag each release, each update you do to a module with a version number, especially when it comes to changing Silverstripe versions or dependencies or requirements. So I'm going to go ahead and create our tag for version 1 and publish that up to GitHub. So that's how we tag version 1. Obviously, I'm using Tower. I can't tell you how to do it on the command line. Let's do a very quick update and show you how we might go about tagging version 2, but I'll show you how to do it in GitHub. That is possible. So if we find not that one, but our actual module from earlier, and we're going to change vehicle, and we're going to add a electric option to the transmission. And now if I open up our repository, there we go, we can go ahead and commit that. Added electric option. Can't type and speak. Okay, so I'm going to push that up to GitHub and find our module. Where is it? Here we are. Refresh that. Nice. So we made an update to our module. We've simply just gone into where it was in our original project that we downloaded the repository for. We've made our update, we've pushed it up, but now we need to tag it, add a version. So the way you can do that on GitHub is using their releases option. So if you click this little link that says create a new release, and over here, when you click choose a tag, you'll note that it says find or create a new tag. So it's a little bit hidden, but we can simply type in 1.0.1 in there, click create new tag on publish, and when we click publish, that's us, got our 1.0.1 release where we added our electric option. So that's updating modules. You've got them now being managed within a single site on your local development, whether it was a new site or an existing site. You can make your change, you can push it up to GitHub, and then you can tag it with a release number following semantic version. Okay. Right. Yes, I did that. Okay, let's switch things around a little bit, and let's talk about how we can customize a module that's been created by another developer. So why might we want to do that? Well, maybe you want to add a feature to it that is required for the project you're working on. Maybe you want to disable a feature of that module that's not relevant to the project that you're working on. Maybe you want to fix a bug and get the code up there quickly, or equally resolve a security issue. Why can't you just edit the files in that vendor directory? Well, firstly, Composer will not be happy with you. If you try and just directly edit the files in that module where it's installed in your project, next time you come to update that module, Composer will complain, the files have changed, do you want to keep them or not? And then you start getting in a big mess, not knowing which files have been updated and which haven't. So it basically makes it much harder to update the module in future in your project. And overall, it makes it harder to maintain your project, especially if you've got multiple developers. So don't do that. How do we do it? 4 ways that I'm going to go over. We're going to start with overriding the module templates. So let's have a quick look at that now. Say, for example, on our, let's take our new demo site here. Say we wanted to tweak how the cars were displayed on this particular page. What we can do in our other one, Stripe rental, here we go. So what we can do, we can simply find our module, Purple Spider, templates, and we can copy, you'll see the templates are in here, the vehicle card and the holding page. We can copy that complete Purple Spider directory and pop it into our theme templates directory. And now we've got a copy of these templates that you can edit, and due to the templating cascade in Silverstripe, they will be used. So for example, I can jump in and edit the vehicle card template. Say we just at the bottom, I wanted to add a quick little horizontal line. When we jump back to our site, let's jump back to vehicles and do a flash. And now we've got a line between each card. So very simple. If you're looking to customize how the templates are working on from a particular module, all you need to do is copy them into your project and modify them. Second option is to create an extension. So say you wanted to change some of the functionality of a particular module. Then we can create an extension. Let's say that on our site here, our new Stripe rental site, when we're managing our vehicles, let's say that we want to add in a new field into here, a daily price field. So what I'm going to do is jump over to our code, and in our app source, I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call it vehicle extension. And in here, I'm going to plop this. So we simply have the class of vehicle extension, and I'm extending data extension. And I've got three things here. First, you probably recognize the standard private static DB array, which adds database fields to a data object. When you use this in an extension, it is simply appending any that you add here to the existing ones, so it's not overriding them all. So here we are adding a new database field for daily price of the type currency. Second, I am making use of the update CMS fields hook that exists on data objects, which allows you to modify the fields that appear in the CMS in order to be able to simply add a currency field for our daily price. And lastly here, I'm just slotting in a custom function, get weekly price, that is simply just multiplying the daily price by 7 and 90%, and we can access that in our templates. So we've created this little extension. How do we apply it? To apply an extension, we jump over to our site config and slot in this. So here we're saying, for the vehicle class in our car database module, apply the extension vehicle extension, my site vehicle extension, which is this one we just created. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a dev build. And now if we jump over to our CMS and do a flush, you'll see we have a nice new daily price field. So there we have modified a module by adding a CMS field using an extension. When using extensions, you can also make use of existing hooks that the developer of a module has put into their code. So have a look through the code and see if you can find any instances where it says this extend. And that allows you to then jump in from your extension and modify the particular object that has been passed to this line. So here, for example, if I, as the module developer for our car database, I would probably be a good idea for me to add this extend line in our inquiry form method to allow anyone to modify the form object. Simply by creating their extension, creating a method with the name update inquiry form, and then that allows them to modify the form in any way they see fit. So in this case, they're modifying the inquiry form by removing one of the fields from it. So have a look around the modules, see if you can find an extension that will allow, a hook that will allow you to use an extension to modify it in the way that you'd like to. When creating an extension, you can also just create modules of extensions. So say you had one or more extensions that you like to use throughout multiple projects, create a module of them. Or maybe you wanted to create a kind of optional enhancement to somebody else's module. Create that extension, make it as a module, and make it public. That's absolutely fine. Do remember though that extensions are reliant on existing hooks in the Silverstripe core, such as update CMS fields, but also in the modules that you're trying to adjust. So if you are unable to do what you want to do using an extension, that brings us on to the third way of modifying modules, which is using subclass and injector. So let's have a look at that quickly. Say that we wanted to modify our form here. Availability, this inquiry form. Let's say we want to modify this form, and let's pretend that the developer hadn't added a hook to allow you to modify that form in an extension. What we can do is we can create a file in our site, and I'm going to call it custom vehicle holding page controller. You can call it what you want. And I'm going to slot in this chunk here. So all we have here is a class of custom vehicle holding page controller, and it is extending vehicle holding page controller because that is the class that we're looking to modify. In that class exists the inquiry form in the module that we're looking to adjust. What we can then do is go ahead and delve into our module that we're looking to modify in Purple Spider car database. We can find the vehicle holding page controller, and then we can find the things that we want to tweak. So here I want to modify the inquiry form, so I'm going to grab all the code related to that, and I'm going to copy it. Copy it into my custom vehicle holding page controller. Okay, it's in there. I'll just import use classes. There we go. So now that it's in there, we can customize it. So say we wanted to simply add a couple more fields. I'm adding a pickup location and a return location. Slot them in there. Okay, so we've created this subclass of vehicle holding page controller, and we've modified one of the methods, but how do we get Silverstripe to use custom vehicle holding page controller rather than the original one from my module? Obviously, we don't control the code in the module, so we can't simply go to the module and update the code to point to our custom one. So that's where injector comes in. So again, if we jump to our site config, and we can slot these lines in here. So what we're saying here is, injector, please, when there's any instances of vehicle holding page controller from the car database module, don't use that one. Use our custom vehicle holding page controller instead. And because it's a subclass, if any methods don't exist in your custom one, it will just fall back to using the ones from the module. So with that in place, I'm going to do a dev build, and then jump over, give it a flush, and there we have our two fields. So there we have modified a method in a module that didn't have any hooks by creating a subclass, copying that method into it, making our changes to it, and then using injector to say, use our subclass, please, not the original one. Now, injector basically allows you to override a whole class. So it does need to be used responsibly and carefully. And you especially need to be careful when applying updates from a module because you might have changed things that the original module developer wasn't expecting you to change. So when using injector, it's very powerful, just be careful when using it. The fourth and final way to customize someone else's module is to fork it and just modify it. But this should only be used as an absolute last resort. Because if you do this, you're effectively creating a completely separate copy of the module, you're making your changes, they're not being contributed back into the original module. You then have to make sure that any updates to the original module get merged into your module. So it does give you complete control to do whatever you want with that module, but should be the last resort. To do that, you would simply, in GitHub, click the fork button. It will create a copy of that repository in your GitHub account. You can then create a new branch so that you can work on adding your features to a new branch on that fork. And then we can include that fork in your project in exactly the same way that we installed our private module originally. So we are telling GitHub about we're telling Composer about our fork by adding this line into your Composer JSON file of your project, where we're telling it about our Purple Spider user forms fork. And then, almost exactly as we did before, we're using Composer require to tell it that we want the Silverstripe user forms module. We want our branch of it, so that's when Composer will be like, oh, it's not in the original one, let's look in these extra repositories that we now know about to find our branch. And again, we've got our magic option here, prefer source, and that will allow us to then make our changes to that particular module, to that particular fork, and push them back up. When your project requires a specific version of the module you're forking, you may also need to tell Composer what version to pretend that this branch is, because Composer is unable to work out a version number just from a branch name. So that's where you put as and the version number that you are wanting it to effectively be to Composer, so that Composer doesn't complain that something requires version 6 and you're just installing some random branch. So in summary, if you want to modify a module that you do not own, start with just copying over the templates and modifying them. Then create extensions to adjust module behavior. If that doesn't help, try Injector. And last of all, you may fork the module and install it using Composer. Okay, so with that all in mind, I'm going to quickly go over 4 ways that you can then make your module that you've created easier for other developers to customize. Number 1, add config options. So as we saw, I added a config option to allow people to turn on or off the inquiry form. And by adding that in the module config file, I can refer to it from the vehicle holding page PHP, and that's what decides whether or not to display the inquiry form. And that means that anyone who wants to use the module can simply put that same config in their site config and change the value to false, and they can completely disable the inquiry form without needing to touch any PHP code. So you might want to have a think about your module, how other people might want to use it, turn features on and off by adding some config options to your module. Number 2, if you add extension hooks, so exactly as I showed, think about adding in simply just that one line in a few places in your module that will allow people to jump in and modify particular objects at particular times. Just as we saw, it will allow people to create an extension using the method name and modifying the object that you've passed in. Number 3, so there's not much use of pushing up a module and you've got lots of hard-coded strings in your local language. Say you had a module, it was in English, you had lots of hard-coded strings for button labels or headings, and then someone wants to use the module on a German site, and it's going to be a right headache for them to be trying to modify all those strings. They'll probably just end up forking the module and doing it manually. But we should be responsible, and instead of hard coding strings, so here, for example, in my inquiry form method, I have got this is where the label of the form button is set, and I've simply set it as a hard-coded string saying send. What we want to do is replace any hard-coded strings with the _t function, which takes 2 parameters. The first is the class, where that string is. The second is a unique key for that particular string. And then the second parameter is the default text that's going to be used. And you can do the same in templates. Adding those in, and your module will still work fine. But there's a second step that you should really do, and that is to add in a language YAML file. So in our car database module, we might want to create a lang folder, add in an en.yaml file, and in there, we simply put each class and each of our keys and each of our strings and what they are. And what that allows someone to do, if they install this module on a German website, they can simply copy that English YAML file, slot it into their site language directory, and translate each of the strings, and they will then get used on that website that uses the German locale. Okay, 4th and final way. Use before update CMS fields. So if in your module you are adding a field to a page type in the normal way, where you're taking the parent field, so that would be the ones that has the page name and the URL segment, and then you're adding in this field, such as this email field. By doing it this way, it means that no one can then modify that field that you've added in, because it's getting added in after the update CMS fields hook is called, because that's called in the parent. So if someone wanted to remove or rename this field in an extension, they would not be able to. To resolve this, you simply need to wrap that addition of the field in a before update CMS fields call that includes a function. And this function will be called, as it says, before the update CMS fields hook is actually called. And by doing it this way, it means that someone could write an extension to modify anything that you do in there, such as rename that field, remove that field, do what they want. So just be mindful, when adding a field to a page type in your module, use before update CMS fields so that people can easily modify those fields in an extension. So that is us. I hope this has inspired you to go ahead and create your first module if you haven't yet created one, or even more modules if you have. I'd love to see what you create. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. You did very good. I didn't know that my job is to rush people the whole day. You did very well under interesting conditions.
Certainly different, certainly unique.
Yeah, and I have to postpone the questions to the lunch. Thank you very much, James. I know that I have to get better in modules. I'm very good in creating projects and copying stuff from other projects, and you know that. And it's really easy, as you showed, and we all have to get better at
Great.
this.
I hope you followed it. I have put up a kind of very brief summary of everything that, that I covered in here. As I said, it is all covered in the official docs as well, but for a kind of quick reminder, take a look at that link, and it's got everything that I covered in it today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.